4 p.m. Okay, great.
Yes.
So Judy and I, for now, are the only ones who are really very early.
Yes, very early. Very, very early.
No. Oh, good morning, Yuna.
Good evening here.
No, yeah, that was the point. What time is it in Korea?
It's 7 p.m., near 7 p.m.
Okay, so it's still decent.
Yes.
Now, the problem with so of course, we can't expect many people from the Americas this morning. Well, now. So it's not yet the official time to begin, 5 a.m. in Montreal. We'll wait a couple of minutes and we'll start around 3 or 4 past 5, just to Montreal time, just past the hour, just to let time for some people who could have had problems waking up, and we'll start. Oh, we still have 1 minute. So just joking. I'll put up a contest. I'm sure I will win. What's the temperature in Bangladesh right now?
It's 20 degrees Celsius, I think.
Okay. And in Paris? So it's not worth it. So right now in Montreal, it's minus 17. And if you're outside, because of the wind, it feels like minus 25.
It's minus 25 with the wind in Montreal, Benoit?
I just checked.
That and I am in Montreal. So.
Usually that's January, not December, but it might happen. Okay, so I guess most people will just be a bit lazy and watch the recording on the Dropbox or on the side of the USSP. So we'll just start right now. The first presentation is by you, Mehdi. So we're starting. It's your turn.
Yes, sir.
Can you share your PowerPoint?
Yes, sir, I'm starting.
Okay, great.
Do you see it, sir?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for having me here. I'm Mehdi Hassan Khan. I work in Department of Population Sciences, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. The title of my presentation is Changing Family Demography and Emergence of Aged Care Law and Policy in Bangladesh.
If I may, what we're seeing right now is not your slideshow, it's your working space.
I see.
So would you just
Yes, sir.
turn in? Perfect.
Yes,
Okay,
all right, thank you.
great.
Thank you, sir. Bangladesh Parliament enacted Parents Maintenance Act 2013 in 2013. The government justified it as a necessity and judicious to legally ensure maintenance of parents by their children. And Ministry of Social Welfare prepared a draft of the modus operandi to implement this law named Parents Maintenance Rules 2017. It was reviewed by Law Commission Bangladesh, which hailed this law as a social welfare law and justified it as a time-appropriate initiative to legally ensure parents as well as older persons maintenance and other related livelihood supports. Similar kind of laws were also enacted in different South Asian countries in the last 20 years, like in Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, India, Myanmar, and Pakistan. Ministry of Social Welfare in our country gazetted the National Policy on Older Person 2013, and its goal was to ensure dignified, poverty-free, active, safe life for older persons. At least 4 objectives of this policy were directly related to the changing family context in Bangladesh. And one of the very conspicuous objectives mentioned the necessity of enacting law to ensure overall safety of the older persons in the context of the increasing urbanization and collapse of traditional joint family system. Usually older persons are revered and protected within family, community, and societal levels in South Asian culture. Bangladesh, it is the 8th most populous and medium human development country, is going through myriads of socioeconomic change during the last few decades. Changes in fertility, mortality, migration, obesity, women's position, overall urbanization, industrialization, modernization impacts have brought major changes in the cultural and socio-demographics of the traditional family context. The changing family trends have hampered traditional state of family maintenance of the emerging increased number of older persons. It is quite apparent that family context has changed to the extent that the state has initiated these formal measures to legally ensure maintenance of older persons. With this background, the objective of this paper is to explore the state of changing family context, family demography, and the state of enacted law and policy to ensure maintenance of older persons within the changing family context in Bangladesh. The changing trends of fertility, mortality, migration, obesity, household size, urbanization, number of older persons, participation of women in labor force, education, is collected. National data from census, different surveys were used. The changing trends of these variables are used to identify the socio-demographic changes in the traditional family structure, and the Nature and Scope of Parents Maintenance Act 2013 and National Policy on Older Person 2013 is reviewed to argue the necessity of this initiative. Socio-demographic drivers of the changing family context in Bangladesh. Bangladesh has a very dramatic fertility decline in the 1990s. TFR declined from 6.3 in 1975 to 3.3 in 1996. And in 2019, it was 2.04. This dramatic fertility decline attracted attention of the demographers, and there are several kinds of explanations. Age at first birth has an increasing trend. Median age at first birth among 20-24 years women was 16.8 in 1975, and it was 19 years in 2000, increased to 19 years in 2014. Fertility preferences have changed. Percentage of currently married women aged 15 to 49 with 2 living children want no more children has increased from 49.8% in 1993 to 71.6% in 2017-18. Perception about ideal family size has also changed. A trend of desiring small family was already predominant in 93-94, and mean ideal family size was 2.5 at the time. And in 2014, according to the last Bangladesh Demographic and Health Survey, it was 2.2. The annual growth rate of population declined from 2.48 in 1974 to 1.37 in 2019. Life expectancy has increased from 46.2 years in 1974 to 60 years in 1997, and it was 72 years in 2019. Male life expectancy was higher than female life expectancy till 2000. Since 2001, female life expectancy has been higher than male expectancy. And in 2019, female life expectancy was 74.2 and male life expectancy was 71.1 years, which initiated some feminization of aging situation. Maternal mortality ratio, neonatal mortality rate, post-neonatal mortality rate, infant mortality rate, child mortality rate, under 5 mortality rate, all have decreased significantly, and all these are successful programs of public health departments, health ministry. Migration increased. Lifetime internal migration has increased 3.44 in 1974 to 9.82 in 2011. In-migration rate, out-migration rate, all has increased, and a feminization of migration is observed here in the recent internal migration, and the sex ratio in the urban areas is declining. In traditional countries like Bangladesh or other South Asian countries, basically male are the migrants, but now we see that female are coming and they have employment opportunity in the urban areas. Large cities in the country, in the sex ratio has declined significantly. In 1974, urban sex ratio 129.4 and it declined to 109 in 2011. Rural sex ratio is also declined. International migrants have increased many times. We have some information. These information are from the government agencies, which have authentic data. But other than government, a lot of international migrants are there. So the number should be very far greater than the number we get from the government agencies. Due to the demographic transition, Bangladesh entered into the aging regime from demographic transition from high fertility, high mortality to low fertility, low mortality in the 1990s. And percentage of older person has increased from 5.4% in 1991 to 8.2% in 2019. Absolute number increased tremendously. It has become almost double, 6.2 million in 1991 to 13.6 million people who are more than 60 years age. Anniversality changes also happened. Marriage is almost universal in Bangladesh. Child marriage is very prevalent in Bangladesh, but Bangladesh is experiencing a slow and steady increase of age at marriage. Women mean age at marriage has increased from 17.8 years in 1981 to 18.9 years in 2019. Legal age of at marriage Bangladesh is 18 years in 1993. 73% women aged 20 to 24 were married before the legal age of 18, but this percentage has come down to 59% in 2017. Widow, divorced, separated, both male and female increased. We have some number from the government statistical body, but they are very informal situation where marriage or divorce are not registered. So this number is not. The real number should be very high. General divorce rate for male and female, general separation rate for male and female also increasing trend. Household structure change. The average household size is decreased. It was 5.7 in 1981. It reduced to 5.1 in 2000, and it was 4.2 in 2019. Number of 1 to 5% household has increased, and number of 6 to 10% household has decreased during 1991-2011 periods. Female-headed household number is increasing over the decades. Women's educational and labor force participation increased over the decades. Women's literacy rate was 16.4 in 1974, which was far lower than male in 1974, and it is increased to 72.3 in 2019. Female labor force participation has increased from 4.0 in 1974 to 36.3 in 2017. Level of urbanization has increased from 8.78% in 1974 to 28% in 2011, and it became 38.2% in 2020, according to some UN estimation. Agriculture sector contribution to GDP has declined from 57% in 1974 to 13.65% in 2018-19. Industrial sector's contribution increased manifolds. Service sectors has appeared as the largest sector. All these trends have significantly contributed to the traditional rural agricultural decline and increased rural to urban migration, as well as international migration. Ready-made garment sector is one of the largest industrial sector in the country, which attracted female workers. Majority of workers are female, and they are rural to urban migrant. And international migration, basically unskilled labor, a huge number of people are in Middle East and other regions. Low wage and employment crisis in the country generated this large international migration flow, and remittance is a very big factor in Bangladesh socio-economic context. So these are some of the background changes which bring so many changes in families' size, families' structure, families' attitude, internal relationship among family members. And due to the demographic transition, due to the public health development, we have aging, where we have entered into the aging regime. But modernization-related changing family context has put the emerging aging population into the risk of getting ill-treated, abused, and abandoned. Although evidence of plights of older person is almost hidden due to the sensitivity of the issues in a traditional societal context, but different evidence in the newspapers or in other media sometimes come, and it is very shocking for the society. Older persons are often found abandoned in the streets, jungles, hospitals, distant places from their home. Sometimes they are found living with domestic animal sheds by the homestead. And lonely older persons are found killed for robbery, appropriation of landed property, etc. Increasing establishment of old home as well as shelter for abandoned older people by different informal initiatives in many places of the country also validate the argument of the weakening family supports for the emerging number of older people. Government introduced old age allowance in 1998 to financially support this distressed older person. Projection of the emerging demographic trends are inclined to more changes in the present direction, and more vulnerability of the older people are anticipated. In this situation, government introduced Parents Maintenance Act in 2013. It has 9 sections. Section 2 operationally defined a family who is a father, biological mother, biological child, and what is the issues of maintenance. Section 3 has 7 subsections which explains the extent of responsibilities of the children to their parents. Every child, both son and daughter, must ensure maintenance, which is basically the basic needs according to the constitution of the country, like food, clothes, shelter, treatment, accompanied to their parents. Children will live with their parents to provide maintenance and cannot enforce parents to live jointly or separately in old home or any other places against their will. If children cannot live with their parents, they must communicate and meet them regularly, and they must pay parents reasonable amount of money from their income to maintain maintenance. Section 4 extended the definition of family, where grandchildren must provide maintenance to their grandparents in absence of their parents. If children fail to comply the provisions of this law, provisions of punishment like a monetary fine or sentencing to jail, if fine cannot be realized and mentioned, the court can send the dispute to local government bodies, which can also settle the issue in consultation and hearing from both parties. And a policy was also introduced, National Policy on Older Persons 2013. It was formulated according to the principle of the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging. This comprehensive policy introduced the context of diminishing traditional supportive environment of older persons due to different changing socio-demographic situation, which downgraded older persons' status and roles in family and societal context. It put emphasis to increase intergenerational communication and solidarity among generations through generating congenial and supportive family relations and environment. Legal supports are mentioned to ensure older people's ownership and consumption of family property and resources. It urges not to neglect,
5
abuse.
minutes,
Hello?
5 minutes left to your presentation.
Family members with older persons are urged to be aware about aging, both physical, mental health, food, nutrition, so that they can render older family members appropriate care. Family, community, and society, along with other state-level institutions, are brought to the center to organize different welfare initiatives. And the act, to implement the act more functionally, some kind of rules are proposed, named Parents Maintenance Rules 2017. Children, it is again, they highlighted the emerging, changing socio-demographic context. And children have to take care of parents through the members of extended family and kinship network if they are absent or if they are migrant. Necessity of parents care policy for establishment of parents care center, daycare center for older people, night shelter by state as well as private organization. Elaborate technical, socio-cultural requirements for establishing such kind of establishment for older persons are proposed. And these rules were reviewed by Law Commission of Bangladesh. It relates to broader changing family context. And they suggested that the legal issue should be settled in the family court, which was established according to the Family Law Ordinance 1985. If children are financially unable or fail to provide maintenance to parents, the state has to come forward to take this responsibility. Relating the issue of humanity and morality, Law Commission proposes only monetary fine instead of sentencing to jail as punishment. Instead of coming to court for legal measures first, it is advised to seek solution to different parents' maintenance related committees at respective administrative levels. Discussion and conclusion. It is quite evident that changing socio-demographics of the country has brought changes in the size, territorial distribution, and composition of population, which all affect the aged-old traditional family context. And we see an aging regime in the 1990s due to these socio-demographic changes. Modernization, urbanization context, women employment in urban areas, declining household size, migration of both male, female, transformed family to the extent that it is no more able to take proper care of the emerging increased number of older population. State took measures like enacting the Parents Maintenance Act and National Policy on Older Persons to address the plights of the older population. Legal measures are proposed to ensure maintenance of parents, grandparents. State mechanisms are prescribed to take different measures to ensure holistic welfare of the older population. At the same time, besides having law and policy, informal family and kinship system are encouraged in both policy and in both the law. And it is suggested to brought to the center to make a socio-cultural foundation to ensure welfare of the older population. Especially Law Commission mentioned the shortcomings of applying law to compel children in this regard. However, it is also evident that the Parents Maintenance Rules has proposed to establish different types of alternative arrangements outside family to provide service to the older population, which are not initially mentioned in the Act in 2013. It can be concluded here that the changing family demography and its emerging increasing inability to take care of the older members is understood at the state level, and thereby state initiates measures. Although formal measures outside family context are proposed, family is also envisioned to play and guide the moral of the society. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mehdi.
So,
You've been pretty good on time, so we've got a full 10 minutes for comments and discussion. So we're not that many, so as someone question or comment, Gael, Yuna, Loretta? If they don't, I do. Loretta?
I have a question. Yes, thank you very much for the presentation, the detailed presentation. I am wondering two things that were going on in my mind while you presented is what is the level of unemployment in Bangladesh? Because if you want children to take care of their parents and they don't have a job, what happens? Two, it's common in many less developed countries to have policies in like this, but implementation is usually a challenge. So I don't know. I would like you to speak on the implementation of the policies that you just presented to take care of the welfare of old people in Bangladesh. The policy is fine. How about implementation? Is it well implemented? Thank you.
thank you. Can I answer now, sir?
Of course.
Unemployment rate is high, so international migration is happening. If children are unable to take care or take the responsibility of parents or other older members of the family, the Law Commission proposed to add in the law that the state has to come forward to take the responsibility. State has to take these responsibilities. There are different committees, different administrative level, like in district level, in sub-district level, in village level. There are different kinds of committee would be constituted. According to the law, they will take responsibility. And there are also proposal to establish different kinds of alternative arrangement where the abandoned older people can reside, can get food or shelter or treatment, etc. So in terms when children are unable, state has to come, state, society or community level. And policy, yes, it is very right. We have many policies. This policy was formulated in 2013, and we have action plan in 2015. 2-3 issues have been implemented. Many things are in paper basically, but there are some awareness and people are thinking. That is happening at least. Some people are getting aware. There's this demographic transition is happening, and some people are in plights. It is the achievement of those policies, I think, and some little works is going on that I can say about it. Thank you.
Other questions? Yuna?
Only just a quick question. The law, is it again, I mean, is it based on people's general opinion, or like the people in general, they were against the law or they are pro to the law? I'm curious.
There are some cases filed in this law, but there are no verdict was given so far. It was settled outside. Some parents complained in the court, but there was no formal hearings or things. Court referred this to the local government bodies, and local government bodies solved the problems. So, and the latest recommendation about the law is that punishment will not make the situation good. Rather, everybody or state should come forward to solve the issues. But there is a law, and it is there. But very few cases are filed. Very few cases. Number over the last 7-8 years, it could be number 5, 6, 10. When such kind of case is filed in the court, it is a national news basically. Some parents filed a case against their children. It's a national news. So we learn them from the national media that In some places, some children, some parents filed a case against their children, but it's very rare. Thank you.
Other questions? I do have one. It will be a very Western question. Of course, the how to support people in their old age is a universal question, and there was something similar to what you're describing that is right now in South Asian countries. This existed in Western countries, but more than a century ago. There are still legal provisions about the maintenance duties across generations, but they're not at the core of old age support right now. Is there something like pension funds or public pension funds in Bangladesh? And if they're not well developed, are there any policy projects to develop them? Or is it completely far-fetched to think about those things in a country like Bangladesh?
Yes, employees in the formal sector, they have pension, but who are employed in informal section, informal services, government introduced old age allowance system in 1998, but it's very small amount of money. It has increasing trend, but we have almost 1 crore and 40 lakhs older people. Only 40% or 35% older people get this benefit. Still 60% out of this pension.
So basically what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, is that because a large fraction of Bangladesh's economy is informal, it's not feasible to imagine a formal system of old care support.
Right.
So because of the informality of the economy, it will, old age support will remain a family business or family duty.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
We still have a couple of minutes. If there is no other question, I will have one, which will be basically be in the same, a bit the same of what Yunus asked, but maybe a bit more, a bit different. You asked if there were support for the law, and you answered that people seem to, well, I understood that you answered that most people seem to support it because you don't have that many court challenges. But do people feel that that's the good way to do things in the public opinion, or do people think that old age support should be organized in some other fashion?
People, there are some children who are really careless. Some children can afford, but they are careless or they choose other issues. People are happy that those law is good for those kind of people, but majority people, if some kind of verdict come against you, it is a social stigma. If parents file legal suits against you, it's a social stigma. So it's rare events that parents are going to court. Rather, they try to settle the issue in community context with the support of local government bodies. But people appreciated the law. It is there. People appreciated the existence of the law.
People feel, okay, the public opinion would be that what the government is doing with those laws is the right thing to do.
Yes, that is the general opinion.
Okay, well, thank you. If there are
Thank you, sir.
no more questions, we will Thank you very much for your presentation. We will go to the next
Yeah,
presentation by Gail Melly.
Yes, thank you. Try to share my screen with you. Okay. Is it okay?
Right now, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you. I had some issues with the internet connection, so I moved. I hope everything will be okay now. So I will start by thanking the organizers for letting me presenting this work. So it is a part of the work I did for my PhD research in sociology, and now I will focus on it was on same-sex marriage in France, in fact, the PhD, and now I will focus on the legal context effect for same-sex couples who choose to marry by comparing the married couples and the unmarried couples. So I will explain a bit more. Just a quick introduction. So throughout the last decades, the rights of same-sex couples have significantly increased in Western countries. And then research showed that the young lesbians and gay and bisexual more often aspire to a family life than in the past. So that is to say, getting married and having children mostly. However, in the countries where same-sex marriage has been authorized, we know that same-sex couples married much less often than different-sex couples. And there is some kind of explanation, probably because gay men and lesbians are more often ideologically opposed to marriage as a model, as an institution, and also because they are less likely to have children. As I will go back to it later, but it is more complicated for them. And in fact, in France, we can estimate by combining statistics and administrative data that approximately 1/3 of same-sex couples got married since the enactment of the law. So this rate is relatively high in comparison with other European countries, not with America, because America is quite different on that question, but comparing to Scandinavia, for example, this is a quite high rate. So we can ask why this is so high in France. And my point would be probably because of the French legal context. So I will explain that. And I will study some research question like, do married same-sex couples differ from the unmarried? And I will compare the two groups on different questions. And also, how can we explain this variation? So this will provide some aspect for research on union and couples in general. So just a quick focus on the data. I will analyze the Virage LGBT survey, which is a part of a French survey concerning violence. It was conducted by the French National Institute of Demographic Studies and addressed to LGBT people. So this is a different part of the survey. And the questionnaire integrates various questions on health and violence, but also some questions on gender and sexual identities and relationships, couple, parenthood, and some elements on life courses. So we can study many things, not only violence. But it was the point is that it was disseminated through LGBT media, websites, and associations. So this is not a representative survey, and we have to be aware of that. But this is probably the best data we have right now, as this is a big sample. And this is an important dimension because, as you probably know, same-sex couples are difficult to count because they are a minority group. So we have issues on the data, especially in France. And here we can use the same data to compare married couples to unmarried couples. So this is quite a good point. And I will also refer to qualitative studies I conducted for my PhD with 50 people who get married with someone of the same sex in France. And I will refer to it because I asked questions on the meanings they attach to the decision of getting married. So it could help to understand the statistics and different effects I will highlight. So before going on the results, just a brief focus on the French legislation, because I'm guessing you're probably not all aware of that, but there's some specific point of the French legal context you have to know. So most same-sex couples try to conceive their own biological children, mostly because it's international adoption is really, really complicated, and there are very few minor children to adopt by this way. So this is mostly by artificial reproductive technologies. But in France, they are restricted so far to heterosexual couples who were medically diagnosed as infertile. And because of that restriction, the legislator only provided rules for the case of adoption by a same-sex couple. So there is no parental recognition in France, no presumption of motherhood for a woman couple, which exists in most European countries and also in Quebec, in Canada, I guess. So the non-biological parent in a same-sex couple is forced to adopt his own or her own child after the birth and to build a file for a judge with many components to justify their parental investments. Because adoption in France is still restricted to married couples since the Napoleon Code many, many years ago, when children born outside marriage were considered as illegitimate children. So this matrimonial privilege toward filiation was criticized and reversed progressively during the 20th century, but there's still a mark of it in the law, as this is the case here. So this is a particular point of the legal context compared to other European countries. Some results now. I will show you the table. Virage LGBT survey revealed that among LGBT people, married couples are much more likely to have children than unmarried couples. And in the qualitative study, most people raising children conceive them through artificial reproductive technologies. So they also refer to getting married as a decision that occur in their life in order to establish affiliation with their children and being legally recognized as parents. Even if some wanted to get married for other reasons, like, of course, commitment, political rights, and administrative issues, an important part are in fact ideologically opposed to marriage as an institution and as a model, and they explain how it could represent a legal constraint in their view. So in fact, an important part didn't want it to get married, even if they have to. So this is the data. We can see that married couples are much more likely than unmarried couples to have children. And this is especially the case for women, because women are much more likely than men to have children. In fact, mostly because it's quite more easy for them than for men to have children by artificial reproductive technologies, and also because of gender effects, but I won't get through it right now. Some other differences between married and unmarried couples. So the relationships of married couples are much more stable than those of unmarried couples. The relationship of married men have lasted on average 15 years versus 9 years for the unmarried. And this is 10 years versus 6 years for women. So this is probably because marriage occurs after several other steps associated with stability, such as cohabitation, finding a job, buying a house, and things like that. And the lengths are always lower among women. On that point, many research show that women are more likely, in fact, to split up than men couple. So this is probably because of that. Also, married couples are more religious than unmarried couples. This is not huge differences, but 40% of men and 33% of women say they have a religion among the married, versus 35% of men and 24% of women among the unmarried. And on social economic statuses and things like that, gay men married with another man perceive higher incomes than gay men in unmarried couples. And to a lower extent, this is also the case for women. So we can see that the married ones are more likely to earn the highest level of incomes by month. Class effects, we can say, could explain the attractiveness of marriage because it's associated with economic and social benefits, like for inheritance, patrimony, and things like that. So there's probably some effects on that point. And also cultural norm associated with luxury wedding also force people with less financial resources to delay it or giving up, just because it's quite expensive to organize a wedding right now with this cultural norm. This is probably the point. Okay, so this is the result, just some brief statistics, but there also could be structural effects on that. So I made a logistic regression to analyze the different effects one by one and see the different things. I modelized the probability of being married rather being unmarried. And it shows that parenthood plays a strong role in the probability of being married. So I will show you, but here, in fact, you have all the results. Married, in fact, mothers in women couples are 7 times greater to be married than non-parents. And fathers in men couples are also 2 times more likely to be married than the one who didn't have child. So these effects are less important for men, but still significant and quite important. And so there's quite strong effects on parenthood and the model. And this is probably more important in France than in other countries because being married, as I said, is required to obtain filiation rights with children. So in the qualitative studies, there's also a quite important effect of people who say that the legal context for filiation constrained them if they plan to have child or they're raising children already, they're being constrained to be married for that reason. And some related, I will go back to it later, but some related that they would certainly not have married if the legislation and parental recognition have been different. In fact, so going back a bit on the regression, here we can see that, yes, for women who have children are 7 times greater to be married than unmarried. And there's also some effects of the length of relationships. People who are together in a couple for more than 10 years are quite more likely than others to be married. And some also effect of the housing in the couple. So this is the people who own a house together, who are more likely than others to be married. And this is probably because marriage is associated with patrimonial effects and inheritance and things like that. But we can see that on the other point and variable, there's not too many effects. So education has no impact on the decision of marrying. I also made a model with the incomes and economic incomes, and there's no impact on the decision of and the fact of being married. But as I said, high lengths of relationship are associated with the choice of marriage. Men that are in a couple for more than 10 years are 3 times more likely to be married than the ones with a shorter relationship. And women in the same situation are 4 times more likely to be married. So again, conjugal stability seems to reinforce this choice. At a less extent, economic issues, as I said, being honored together, but this effect is quite less important. And yes, other economic issues like income and things like that don't seem to play any role in that. And religion also has no effect after control on other variables, even if we saw that the married were a bit more religious before.
4
Okay.
minutes.
Yeah.
4 minutes.
Okay, I'm almost finished. So the point would be that most of the effect seems to be around parenthood, and this is the great impact on the results. And how can we explain that? So the point in my PhD was to say there was a constraint to marriage because of the legislation around parenthood and adoption. That is to say, people who seem forced to be married because of adoption, even though in fact, in France, this is probably different than in other countries, but they tend to be really critical and to criticize marriage as an institution. So I just quote someone I interviewed during the PhD, and this is Clara, and she said, we got married because her daughter was about to born, otherwise we wouldn't have. And the goal was really to be able to do the adoption process because the requirement was marriage. We got married, and that's the context. And she said that we didn't consider the partnership before because the idea of union was outside an institution, as no need to be united under the Republic values or society or anything. But yes, with our parental project, and we were forced to, that's it, that's the beginning. So I asked if she wouldn't have married without this adoption process, and she says, no, I don't know, maybe the future of our project would have again confront the question of marriage, for buying a house, inheritance, I don't know, for administrative issues, we could have made this choice. But we were both of us in a vision of life where we didn't have the wish to marry. Even then, before being with her, I was heterosexual and I didn't want to marry neither. So we both knew that it was an obligation. We experienced it that way. And yes, we thought it was a shame even now to be forced to be married, I mean, and that the partnership is also an administrative step, which is simpler, and it's a kind of folklore to be in front of an elected official, which reads article, which sometimes have no meaning. So she said that she doesn't feel concerned by it for an adoption process, just only to build a family and something like that. So it was the point to explain a bit more these statistics. And just to conclude on that, same-sex couples who married in France is the opening of these possibilities have different characteristics than those who stayed unmarried, so that they perceive higher wages, they tend to be more religious and to live much more often with children. But after controlling all structural effects, it appears that the probability of being married depends mostly on the fact of having children, especially for women. There's also some other effects, like length of relationships seem to be quite important. But I wanted to focus on parenthood because of that qualitative aspect I raised during the study. And these results highlight the impact of the legal context on conjugal choice. For that reason, I would like in further research to study differences between countries and to compare the choice to be married in different kind of countries, because I was thinking that probably this is really different depending on the legal context and what marriage is giving in terms of rights, in terms of obligations and things like that. So it could be interesting to study variation between countries. And I will end with that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Gaël. Are there any comments and questions from Yuna, Loretta, or Mehdi? Yuna.
It was very interesting because in Korea, we are still struggling to pass the law admitting the same-sex marriages. So in Korean situation, many people would really like to have the survey on LGBT couples. So related with that, I was wondering whether you can, make comparison between the people having children within married and without married. So what is the percent proportion or between them? Do you have a comparison of that? So the people who have children within who are married and people who have children who does not have married. Do you have that kind of percentage presented?
Okay. The only I have, in fact, is the one I presented with unmarried one and married one, and we can see that among the unmarried, there is very, very few people who have children, probably because when they have, they're getting married. But we don't have strong, important statistics only on people who have children, because this is quite hard right now in France to have good statistics on same-sex couples. There are very methodological problems like counting them and things like that. So that's why this is probably the best data we have. And in fact, in that we see that among the unmarried, there's very few people who have children. So I don't know if it's answered, but is it okay?
On t'entend pas, Benoît. T'es sur le... we don't hear you, Benoît. You are on the mute.
I'm so disciplined. I'm sorry. I think Mehdi has a comment.
Just curiosity, I would like to know in how many countries legal approval of same-sex marriage? Just curiosity, from curiosity, I would like to know. Another, you mentioned in one stage that married couples are more religious. I would like to know how how this marriage happened, same-sex marriage happened. Is it in the court or in the any civil institutional arrangement or in any religious institution? Just from my curiosity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No, it's in the town hall. In fact, all the marriage and the churches don't allow right now marriage between same-sex couples. In fact, Catholic churches don't allow it right now. So there was some who organized some little events, but in fact, this is not allowed right now. This is only the town hall. And the other question, I'm not sure I understand about how many countries were
Right. How many
allowing
legal approval of same-sex marriage?
in the world, you mean?
Yes, in the world.
I think it's
If I may, I just checked. 29.
29. Thank you, sir.
So it's not changing. Like,
Yes, as of December 15, 29. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, sir.
That's it.
Other questions or comments? I do have a few. At what point you said that in France right now, artificial fertility treatments are reserved to married couples? Or, okay, I just want to know, is it forbidden to unmarried couples or it's not covered by public health insurance?
No, in fact, artificial reproductive technologies are just allowed for heterosexual couples
Oh, I'm sorry.
who were diagnosed as medically infertile. So this is another point, nothing to do with marriage, in fact, but this is you have to be in an heterosexual couple and to be diagnosed as infertile. That's the point.
But if you want to pay from your pocket, still you cannot do it.
And you can't, if this is not the case, you can just go in another country like Spain or Belgium, and this is mostly the case for women couple. They go in Belgium or in Spain and they have children, and then they go back in France and try to adopt the other one, try to adopt the child, and that's the way it works, because they can access right now in France to these techniques.
Okay. And I've got another question. It's about religion. This is very peculiar, especially in a Catholic country. This association between being a same-sex couple, being religious, and being married. I understand it disappears when you control other variables, but some of your controls are endogenous, such as having a kid. So there is a true association between marriage and religion for same-sex couple. It's not spurious. Is there any interpretation?
You mean?
What does it mean?
Than being married and being in a same-sex couple and also being
the relation with religion.
Yeah. I would say, I think religion is still, people are still more likely to be attached to marriage as an institution, I would say. So this is probably also the case for gay men and lesbians who get married. And here, your point was it to
Well,
explain.
my point was, as far as I know, in France, being religious means first being Catholic,
Yeah.
then maybe Jew, then maybe Muslim. There are not that many Protestants, and the Protestants in France are rather traditionalists. It's not like in the United States where you've got a very large brand, a variety of brands of Protestant churches, many of them supporting same-sex marriage. So in the context of the United States, I think I could imagine an explanation. In the context of France, I can't.
Why they're still religious, like
Why this association between religion and being married if you're a same-sex couple? Because all the mainstream religions in France are against
yeah,
same-sex couples.
yeah. Yeah, in fact, the people I interviewed that were religious were mostly Catholic. So it's a bit complicated to combine religion and the fact of being in a same-sex couple. But I would say that as they're still yes, marriage would prove something like commitment and being in a stable relationship for them. So it's kind of a way, I would say, to mix their different values. Like religious appears to be incompatible with the fact of being in a same-sex couple, but as they're getting married, the two things are maybe tending to getting closer. Like it's a way of putting them together. Like, yes, we are in a same-sex couple, but at least we're getting married, so it proves that we want to commit to each other, and we still have these strong values of family life and things like that. So marriage could appear to them something important to, yes, mix the different parts of their life together, I would say.
And, oh, food for thought. Thank you very much. We're good on time, so it's time to move to our third and last presentation today. So Loretta, it's your turn. Loretta, are you there?
What's going on? Hello?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Can you share your presentation?
Yes, I can. Excuse me.
Great.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share this research in this seminar. The title of this research is Who Owns a Child? Conflict of Culture and Human Rights in the Dissolution of Customary Law Marriage in Nigeria. I'll start by introducing briefly what marriage is in Nigeria, the marriage process, and the laws guiding marriage in the country. Essentially, marriage begins in Nigeria with a consent between the man and the woman who wants to marry. But there is still the case of arranged marriage. And even with that, there still has to be a consent between the two families arranging the marriage. When that happens, the next thing that happens is the process of exchanging bride wealth from the groom's family to the bride's family. The process can actually take place in one day. It depends on your socioeconomic status, how much money you have. It can also take place within a whole month. It can take place within a whole year or even multiple years. And the exchange of bride wealth from the groom's family to the bride's family involves the payment of bride price. At the end of the exchange of bride wealth, when everything is completed, there is a formal handing over of the girl to the man. And then there is ceremony. That, for most, if not all Nigerian cultures, is the end of customary traditional marriage. But then with the advent of Christianity and Islam, most people do not stop after the traditional. When the traditional is over, if you're a Christian, you may wish to go to the church to celebrate your marriage. If you are a Muslim, you may also wish to go to the mosque to celebrate your marriage. Some other persons may also go to the court to celebrate their marriage. So the coming of Islam and Christianity elongated the process a little more. And marriage in Nigeria is guided by law. If you are marrying in a court or in a church, even under the Sharia, the mosque or church, or the custom, the country has a Matrimonial Causes Act that guides marriage. If you are marrying in the court, what that means is that you are bound to one partner per time. But if you are marrying under the customary law or the Sharia law, you can have more than a wife per time. Nigeria has a legal system that has 4 tiers. At the apex is the Supreme Court. Under the Supreme Court is the Appeal Court, then the High Court, and at the 4th tier is the Magistrate Court, the Customary Court, and the Sharia Court. The marriage can be dissolved in the High Court. It can also be dissolved in the Magistrate Court. It can be dissolved in the Customary Court if it is a marriage celebrated under customs and traditions only. Marriage can also be celebrated, of course, can also be dissolved under the Sharia in the Sharia court. In general, the Matrimonial Causes Act makes provision for reasons for divorce. A primary reason is that before divorce can be granted in Nigeria, there has to be a proof. The party who seeks divorce must prove that the marriage has broken down irretrievably. And the proof could be fault-based, it could be non-fault-based. Fault-based, like in the case of adultery and some other factors. Non-fault could be in the case of the couple has lived apart for like 2 years or more, and none of them objects to the divorce. Then, if a marriage is being dissolved under customs and traditions, there must be the refund of bride price. The climax of dissolving a marriage that is celebrated under customs and traditions is the refund of the bride price to the groom, from the bride's family to the groom. Child custody after marriage can be joint. It can also be sold. And the Nigeria's Matrimonial Causes Act makes provision for the award to consider certain factors. It is usually not a punishment to the guilty party, in quotes. And there are certain factors that must be considered when you want to award child custody after divorce, either jointly or to the man or the woman. Some of the factors that are usually considered, the primary one is the child's welfare. It is also considered the fact of emotional attachment. Whose which of the parents is the child particularly attached to is usually considered. These are provisions made under the Matrimonial Causes Act. There is also the degree of familiarity and the wish of the child is also considered. How much facilities either parents have is also usually considered. The income of the parties is considered, among other factors. It's in general, whether you celebrated your marriage only traditionally, or you went up to the church to celebrate, or court, or in a mosque, whichever way you celebrate your marriage, if you wish to dissolve your marriage, they must be considered. However, in the case of customary marriage or traditional marriage, there are other considerations like the culture of who owns the child. I will speak a little more about who owns the child later on. So the objective of this research is to describe divorce granted under the customary law, with a particular focus on the culture of who owns a child, vis-a-vis the rights of women and children. The research was descriptive. We obtained data in 2017, October, from one customary court in Ekiti State, Southwest Nigeria. Nigeria administratively has 36 states, and Ekiti State is one of those states. Ekiti State is predominantly a Yoruba state. Nigeria has about over 250 ethnic groups, and there are three major ethnic groups: the Hausa Fulani, the Yoruba, and the Igbo. Ekiti State is mainly made up of the Yoruba-speaking Nigerians. In this culture, a man owns a child. A man is said to be the owner of the child. So we conducted this study in one customary court in Ekiti State, southwest of Nigeria. And the number of cases we considered was 15. And we limited our scope, the scope of the cases we considered was between 2002 and 2016. I will explain why. And within this period, 2002 and 2016, there were just about 21 cases of divorce filed in that one customary court. And out of the 21 cases filed between 2002 and 2016, there were just 15 that had clear and complete records. So our analysis is limited to only 15 cases of divorce that had clear and complete records. We limited to 2002 to 2016 because after 2016, the records were not readily available for our use at the time. After 2016, the few records up to October 2017 were not readily available for us to view. We prepared a questionnaire. We extracted the data from the case files using a questionnaire. And we extracted data on the socio-demographic profile of the couples, the duration of their union, the number of children by sex, number of previous marital union, reasons for divorce, who initiated the divorce, award of custody, among others. The data were entered into Microsoft Excel and a simple descriptive analysis was conducted. We described the couple's characteristics using percentages, frequency, mean with standard deviation where applicable. Initiation and reasons for divorce and award of custody were analyzed thematically, and we presented all that narratively. Award of custody was presented using 3 themes: sole custody to the man, sole custody to the woman, and joint custody. The permission to conduct this study was sought appropriately from the court authorities, and they granted us the permission to conduct this study. To ensure anonymity and confidentiality, all direct and indirect identifiers to the couples have been removed from this study. The results now, like I mentioned earlier, all the couples were all of Yoruba ethnic origin. All of them were in their first union, except one couple where the man had been married twice before the current union. The age of the woman ranged from 25 to 46, with a mean of 34.7 years. For the men, their age range was between 25 and 65, with a mean of 46 years. All the men were older than their wives, and the spousal age gap was between 1 to 10 years. The exception was in one couple where the age gap was 38 years. Between the man was older than the woman with 38 years. All of them had attained at least primary education. But in most of the cases, most of the couples, the man was more educated than the woman. It is only in one case that both of them attained higher education. Most of them were of similar religion, particularly Christianity. And all of them, all the couples reported engaging in different types of work. All of them were working before the divorce. The duration of union ranged from 1 to 22, and most of the couples had married for 10 to 22 years. It is only one couple one couple with married for just 1 year. And most of the women married between age 18 and 26, unlike the men. All of them, all the couples we studied had children, except one couple. Of the 15 cases we studied, 12, which is about 80%, divorce was initiated by the wife. In 12 of the 15 cases, divorce was initiated by the wife, and divorce was granted in all the cases except 2. The reason for seeking divorce differed for the man and the woman. For the woman, neglect of herself, her welfare, and her children's welfare is one of the primary common reasons why women sought divorce. There is also the big issue of domestic violence and poverty. For men, for men who initiated divorce, their reason revolve around insubordination, adultery, uncaring attitude to the children and to him, among a few other reasons.
5 minutes left.
In half of the 12 cases, the child custody was awarded to the man. In couple 3, the primary reason for divorce was lack of care for the child and the wife, and yet the custody was awarded to the man. The same thing for couple 5 and couple 7, 8, 10, and 13. Joint custody was granted in 5 cases, but in 4 of the 5 cases, the custody of the child who is awarded to the woman was temporary, because the said child is either underaged or the man had no income at the moment. In all the couples where in all the situations where joint custody was awarded, it was awarded temporarily to the woman. Sole custody to the woman was granted only in 1 case. In that couple, the husband filed for the divorce. He alleged adultery and disobedience against his wife. and the custody of the children was granted to the woman because she has been living with them, and they will live with her until they are age 18. Irrespective of the facts and situations that led to the divorce, the custody of children was granted to the man in almost all the cases. This is contrary to findings in some other countries. A striking observation in our study is that the custody was awarded to the man even when the grounds for divorce is proved to be lack of proper care by the man for the wife and for the children. In other words, the overriding facts of the child's interest and welfare are stated in the country's Matrimonial Causes Act, and the Child's Rights Act is only secondary under the customary law because a man owns a child. Motherhood generally is revered among the Yoruba, where we studied divorce and child custody. But evidence from this research shows that some other factors are completely, even though motherhood is revered, but then when it comes to awarding custody of children after divorce, motherhood is no longer revered. The rights of women, the rights of children is undermined by the way child custody is awarded in almost all the cases we studied. Evidence from some other studies in sub-Saharan Africa shows that children who reside alone with fathers are more likely to have nutritional problems. The study had a few limitations that are stated here, particularly because it is limited to just one customary court. In conclusion, the culture is man-made, we say, and should not be upheld to the detriment of human welfare. The welfare of children should be prioritized in the award of child custody after divorce. The woman has equal, if not more, right to a child. So her right to live with her children should be given the deserved attention in all judgments on child custody after divorce. The Nigerian government should develop strategies and plans to regulate the implementation of child custody award in customary court to ensure greater gender equality in the application of family and customary laws in Nigeria. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Loretta. We're still good on time. So we've got 10 minutes for questions and comments. Who has a comment or a question? I do. If no one else has, I do.
Benoit, huh?
Yes.
Yunama raised her hand and Gael also.
Okay, great, because I was hoping. So Yuna first.
Okay, thank you. It was very interesting. I was wondering at the last part of your conclusion that you mentioned that women also has equal rights for the children's rights, child protective rights. Is it in the law in Nigeria? Do you have a family law or mentioning about the women's or mother's equal rights on child? I was wondering if it's written in the law.
Yes, it is. We have a family law. We have the Matrimonial Causes Act, and we also have a family law. And it is clearly stated that the woman has equal rights. Child custody is not, should not just be given to a man because culture says he owns a child. There should be other considerations, and the considerations are clearly spelled out. The considerations are not gender biased, they are there in the family law. However, implementing it in the customary court enforcing it in the customary court is the main issue. In the customary court, they have the family law, they also have the Matrimonial Causes Act before them. However, the culture seems to override all these things. This is one of the big issues for me, I think our study is highlighting. Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Gael.
Yeah. Thank you. I was just a quick question. I was just wondering what happens after the child is confined to the man, because are the women able to see their children after or something? Because I was thinking it could probably be a huge decision to ask for divorce if you know that you can't see your child after or something, or is it possible?
Yes, of course, they have a right to see their children. The family law, the Matrimonial Causes Act, has that provision. If custody is awarded to a party, the other party would have a visiting right. Is there? She has a visiting right. However, this research is silent on that because it was not in the records.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not in the records we examined. But I do know that in the family law, in the Matrimonial Causes Act, the visiting right is there for the other party who does not have the custody.
Other questions or comments? I've got a few questions. The first one may sound bizarre, but still, how can you, if you want to change the family law or the Matrimonial Causes Act in Nigeria, I mean, it's the job of the parliament. And, but who can reform or change customary law?
You know, I told you, I presented earlier that Nigerian judicial system is in 4 tiers, and the customary law is part of it. So if there is going to be a reform, Nigeria has what is called the Nigerian Judicial Commission. So if there is going to be a reform in any of these laws, the Nigerian Judicial Commission will spearhead it. It has to go from them to the legislature. Okay. And then, the process, the legislative process goes on, and then a reform happens.
Okay, I guess I didn't ask my question properly. So
okay.
It's just that it's hard to ask a question when you don't really know what you're talking about, which is my case. So okay, so I thought when I heard your presentation of the legal system that customary law was a set, but as a body of law different from the rest, the Matrimonial Causes Act, Child Rights Act, and whatever. Now I think that I didn't understand you correctly, and that the customary courts are bound to apply the general law, that is the Matrimonial Causes Act and whatever other pieces of legislation, and they do not have their own body of law. Or still, I'm not understanding the Nigerian system. Okay, I'll phrase it another way. What you call—
But I can, sorry, LaPlante, I can try to explain, maybe I'm trying to imagine what is in your mind. the customs, the laws, the customary laws, which are mainly based on culture, if it has to be changed, if it has to be altered, there has to be a kind of advocacy at the local level, at the cultural traditional level. When there is a kind of pressure, like a group of people comes talking about it, advocating for a change, there is pressure. Nigeria has a strong traditional structure. However, the culture can be changed. Some cultures, such as female genital mutilation, has been changed in some places. So even this can also be changed if there is some pressure at the grassroots level. The culture that informs this, the man owns a child, can actually be changed if there is some pressure on the custodians of this culture.
Okay, now, okay, that basically is the kind of answer I was well, expecting. So who owns a child is not really a law or a customary law. It's basically a cultural tradition within some groups. And so there's no point in trying to change that going to Parliament or going to some kind of customary law commission or whatever. It's really using direct pressure on the people who are around the customary courts. Do I understand correctly now?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? If there are any, well, it's we're coming to the end of our last sessions of our series of 7 sessions on family law and family demography. Thank you everyone for being there well, for me, it's early this morning. In the coming days, all the sessions will be available on Dropbox and in theory on the IUSSP Zoom site. There should be a special issue of some journal based on some of the papers presented in the sessions. If you're interested in being part of that publication effort, write me as soon as possible. I will be writing everyone who has been presenting in the sessions to ask them for whether or not they're interested to be in the publication. And when I've got answers and replies from the presenters, we'll start drafting a proposal. So if you're interested to be part of the publication, please send me a note as soon as possible. Thank you again, everyone. And as I just said, the next step will be preparation of a special issue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bon, on y est.
J'ai un petit peu de temps parce que moi, c'est le matin, puis il faut aller à l'école avec
Oui,
les...
absolument. Mais écoute, ce qu'on va faire, c'est... bon, la première... Bon, j'ai réussi à récupérer ce qui avait été détruit par Alessandra de Rose. Je ne sais pas pourquoi elle, vu qu'elle n'a pas présenté. Parce qu'il y a des copies de sécurité automatiques qui sont faites chez Dropbox.
OK.
C'est mon Dropbox à moi. J'ai réussi, apparemment, là, à restaurer les choses.
Okay.
J'avais déjà commencé à prendre des copies de mon côté. Je vais finir. Donc là, ce que je commence ce matin, c'est de prendre des copies de tout ce qui est là. Okay. Et toi, le plus rapidement possible, tu fais ce que tu as fait les fois précédentes et tu mets le MP4 là où il doit être. Je vais en prendre copie. Une fois que tu vas avoir assuré que ce que tu as à faire pour qu'on ait le MP4 d'aujourd'hui est bien là et que je vais en avoir pris copie, là, on va se réécrire demain, je ne sais pas quoi, là, pour essayer de régler les choses proprement avec l'Union, parce que normalement, ça aurait dû être quelque part sur le site de l'Union.
Eh bien, OK. Quand le Zoom, c'est parce que j'avais mal fait mon setting à certaines rencontres et qui se sauvaient sur mon ordinateur
Ça va.
au lieu de sur le Zoom de l'Union. Puis là, quand c'était sur mon ordinateur, quand je m'en suis rendu compte, c'était après 2-3, je pense.
OK.
Il y a 2-3 rencontres. Mais là, toi, tu as dit que tu as récupéré tout ce qu'il y avait dans le Dropbox?
C'était restauré tout à l'heure, mais je n'ai pas eu le temps de regarder dans le détail ce qui était et ce qui n'y était pas.
Ah, OK. Fait que là,
Euh,
fait que ceux qui étaient sur mon ordinateur, moi, je les ai enlevés parce que ça prenait trop de place sur mon ordinateur. J'étais en train de manquer de place sur mon ordinateur, les rencontres.
Donc, tu n'avais pas gardé de copie de sûreté.
Non, j'avais jamais pensé que. Mais gars, tout est là.
OK. Alors, écoute, il faut toujours avoir des copies de sûreté. Toujours, 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 toujours.
J'ai
Donc,
jamais pensé que quelqu'un pouvait tout effacer. Je suis naïve des fois, tu sais. Moi, avant de faire delete, je le fais annuler.
donc là, ce que je vais faire, c'est que je vais prendre des copies de tout ce qui est là.
Oui.
Je vais commencer ça maintenant. Et une fois que ça va être fait, on se reparle et il faut s'arranger pour remettre les choses sur le site de l'Union comme elles auraient dû être depuis le début.
Mais c'est quoi le site de l'Union? J'ai jamais rien
J'en
mis
ai
sur le site.
absolument aucune espèce d'idée. Il faut discuter de ça avec Paul.
Okay. Oui, mais c'est pas là qu'il faut demander le consentement. Avant de le mettre sur le site de l'Union, il ne faut pas
Non,
demander le
ça aurait
consentement.
dû être là depuis le début, c'est juste les liens. Alors, c'est deux opérations distinctes. Là.
Ah, j'avais pas compris ça.
Moi, écrit à Paul pour lui demander, mais je suis convaincu que ce sont deux opérations distinctes. Ça devait être sur le site de l'Union de toute façon. L'autorisation est une autre histoire. L'autorisation d'accès. Mais la chose devait être sur le site de l'Union depuis le début.
Ah, j'avais pas compris ça, Benoît.
OK. Donc là, moi, je commence à prendre des copies de sûreté de tout.
OK.
Ce que j'avais déjà fait, mais je recommence. Et je vais mettre ça sur... j'ai un petit système de copies de sûreté, là, à plusieurs exemplaires, donc ça va aller dessus. Et puis, de ton côté, là, occupe-toi d'abord de la session d'aujourd'hui.
Oui.
Et ensuite, tu écris à Paul pour les deux questions. Le
OK.
transfert des MP4 sur le site de l'Union et puis les autorisations d'accès.
OK. Fait que là, c'est moi qui vais écrire à Paul, c'est ça?
Pour ces deux choses-là, oui. Moi, je m'occupe des copies de sûreté pour le moment.
Et là, attends, j'ai une autre petite question.
Oui.
Là aussi, tu m'avais envoyé un fichier que je dois retravailler, hein? Tu m'avais envoyé un fichier Word, de PDF que tu avais transféré en Word pour faire le document pour l'Union aussi, hein?
Alors, rapport final, là.
Oui, c'est ça. OK.
OK, d'accord, oui. Effectivement, il faut retravailler ça, mais là, pour l'instant, tu ne fais rien. Parce que ça, il faut qu'on en reparle.
OK. Puis la suite pour janvier, c'est quoi qui arrive?
Euh,
On en parle en janvier?
Ben, c'est un petit peu ça, là, parce que moi, je vais écrire aux gens demain ou après-demain pour le projet de publication.
Oui.
Et là, il faut d'abord que je vois qu'est-ce qu'on va recevoir. S'il n'y en a pas de demi-douzaine, ça s'arrête là. C'est pas réaliste. Et donc là, normalement, si les choses se passent bien, on entre en période de préparation de publication. Ce que j'avais eu en tête à un moment donné était d'essayer de préparer une deuxième série de sessions. Ça, je pense que je vais oublier ça.
OK.
Mais ce n'est pas encore définitif. Il faut d'abord que j'écrive aux gens du panel qu'on n'a pas vu du tout parmi les dans l'auditoire. Alors, je vais voir ce qui se passe de ce côté-là. Ce qui est certain, c'est que moi, je n'ai pas envie de me mettre à terre pour organiser une deuxième série de ce genre-là. Là. J'ai autre chose à faire dans la vie. Et donc, ce qui est le plus probable...
Les gens doivent avoir apprécié beaucoup, par exemple. Les gens doivent avoir apprécié beaucoup.
Ah oui, oui, là, ça, j'en doute pas, là, mais moi, je ne me lance pas dans un autre. J'en ai pas envie. Okay. Si quelqu'un lève la main parmi les membres du panel et veut en organiser un, là, on discutera. On discutera. Et là, tu seras peut-être impliqué, mais là, pour l'instant, je ne parierai pas là-dessus. Et donc, il y a des décisions qui vont se prendre en janvier.
Parfait.
Et là, on en reparlera. aussi, là, peut-être avant janvier, la semaine prochaine, c'est parce que là, il est 6h30 du matin. Mais il faudrait qu'on parle de ton travail, des heures que tu as faites, des heures que tu n'as pas faites, patati patata. Là. Mais là, pas ce matin. Ça va, donc, en fait, on va se réécrire avec un petit ordre du jour pour tous ces machins-là. Ce qui est urgent en ce moment, là, c'est Paul Monnet, les MP4 sur le site de l'Union et Paul Monnet, les autorisations d'accès au MP4. C'est la seule chose qui est urgente pour le moment.
Ça, hier, j'ai demandé, j'ai envoyé c'est quoi le formulaire de consentement pour que je puisse l'envoyer aux gens. Fait que ça, je l'ai envoyé à Paul, puis là, je vais y envoyer un autre pour le MP4.
C'est ça, pour les MP4. C'est la seule chose qui est urgente. Le reste, on va se faire un ordre du jour, puis on va y aller.
OK, parfait. Ben, je te l'enverrai. Je préparerai l'ordre du jour, je te l'enverrai. Tu me diras quand
OK,
je te donnerai mes disponibilités.
Parfait.
Tu choisiras là-dedans.
Exactement. Alors là,
Je te souhaite une bonne journée, un bon café.
à toi aussi. Et puis, je commence les copies de sûreté et puis s'il y a un pépin, enfin, quand c'est fini, je te le dis parce que ce serait bon que tu le saches.
Parfait. Bonne journée. À la prochaine.
Bye.
Bye.